What's up, folks? I'm Chris, your MLB writer here at OccupyFantasy.com, here with a look at the main slates on Wednesday, May 18th on FanDuel, DraftKings, and Yahoo. Split slate day in Major League Baseball, fairly decent afternoon-only games that are available. We're just going to be focusing on the main slates that kick off in the evening hours. Now, over on FanDuel, they decided their main slate would start around 6:40 Eastern, so they actually have an 8-game main slate. DraftKings stuck with the traditional 7:05 p.m. Eastern lock time, so just 6 games on DraftKings tonight. As always, the pitchers is where we like to start when we're going through our options, and I have this filtered for the DraftKings slate. You see, unlike a lot of the previous nights we've done these videos, we have a ton of good pitchers that are available to us tonight. The guys here at the top of the model here, Garrett Cole, Max Scherzer, Shohei Ohtani, Kevin Gausman, Lucas Giolito, these are all guys that we would be happy to roster on any given night. They're all pitching tonight. If you're the type of person that only builds one lineup, you're going to have some choices to make here that are fairly difficult. Now, switching over to a FanDuel filter, you see we have the same group here at the top. So even though in the early window you have Pablo Lopez and Blake Snell available to you that rank fairly high in our model here, I don't think you need to go down that far on FanDuel tonight. Let's start with the number one pitcher in the Occupy model tonight, and that's Garrett Cole of the New York Yankees. Cole facing the Baltimore Orioles. I do think he has the highest strikeout upside on this slate, even with all of these guys here, and despite our ranking having someone else a little higher. Baltimore is a slightly below average performing lineup in terms of fantasy point production over the last month, and they strike out slightly above average. Cole has one of the better matchups of all these guys here at the top of the model, and he is the one at the very top. So therefore, I think he's probably the safest place to start tonight. A little cheaper here than both Scherzer and Kevin Gausman, so I think that will help us get him into our lineups here tonight also. Max Scherzer with the Mets projects for 1.2 strikeouts per inning pitched tonight. That's a little lower than his average of 1.3 over his last year's worth of outings. The Cardinals are probably the toughest matchup for all the stud pitchers on this slate. They're hitting at not an extremely above average rate, but a slightly above average rate. They're striking out at a very below average rate over the last month. So that's why Scherzer's projection here is a little lower than it normally would be in a different matchup. Looking at the batted ball data, he's a little worse off than Garrett Cole above him in the batted ball distance department, but pretty similar in the exit velocity against department. Now, we go below Scherzer, and we can see that the average batted ball exit velocity against and average batted ball distance for our third-ranked pitcher, who also has the highest strikeout projection on the slate, is really attractive. He's just a minus 167 moneyline favorite, so he's less of a favorite than the three of the guys he is sandwiched between here. It's Shohei Ohtani. He's pitching against the Rangers tonight, and the Rangers have been hitting at a fairly below average clip in terms of fantasy point production over the last month, striking out slightly above league average, so certainly see the upside of Ohtani here. I think his ceiling in terms of length of outing might be a little lower than some of these other guys. So that's why I don't think he is actually at the top here, but 17.4 OF index. I mean, we have guys that we've had a couple slates in a row here where we haven't had any pitcher above a 15. We have 5 guys here available on DraftKings with that ranking. I believe 6 over on FanDuel if you include Pablo Lopez. There's just a ton of options here tonight. And what our model is telling us is that you really can't go wrong with selecting any of these guys. Gausman with the Blue Jays. Gausman probably has the toughest matchup of all of these stud pitchers at the top of the model. Seattle is slightly below average. They're right on the average line for fantasy point production, and they are striking out slightly above average. But what's really the issue here for Gausman is this is one of the more hitter-friendly parks across Major League Baseball right now in 2022 in Toronto. So Gausman could have a little bit of a tougher night than these other guys, and he's also the second most expensive option, at least on DraftKings. So that would be one reason to potentially get away from Gausman here. Talked about him a little bit yesterday. He didn't end up throwing. He's throwing tonight. Lucas Giolito still facing the Kansas City Royals. He's a decent moneyline favorite. That would be one of the larger numbers on a normal pitching slate. And he's just $8,300 on DraftKings. I think Giolito ends up pretty popular as a secondary starting pitcher option tonight for that reason. So we probably want to consider him as well. Nice 1.18 strikeout per innings pitch projection. And batted ball data, same as it was yesterday. It still ranks fairly well here on this slate. Big picture, I think you play the 6-game slate, you don't play anyone other than these 5 guys. That's probably a safe way to attack the slate tonight. Now, as always, we do like to target certain pitchers with our stacks, and we look at who ranks at the bottom of the model tonight, Zach Greinke with the Kansas City Royals and Marco Gonzalez with the Seattle Mariners are probably the two guys that we want to key on. Greinke is someone who has wild splits. He's really poor against right-handed hitters. Allows a 204 isolated slugging and a 343 weighted on base average to right-handed hitters over the last year's worth of his outings, but he's very good against lefties. So that's something to keep in mind when you're targeting Greinke tonight. Marco Gonzalez is a left-handed pitcher himself. He actually allows elite ISO, elite weighted on base average to hitters from both sides of the plate. So you're not going to really go wrong with any Toronto options. Now, I suspect if we flip over to the stacks dashboard, you'll see that these two options are ranked fairly high, the White Sox and the Blue Jays. And that's exactly the case here. I have this filtered for the FanDuel main slate right now on our stacks dashboard. Toronto is number 1 overall by OF index on the main slate, number 1 overall on the day by isolated slugging. Looks like they're number 2 on this slate by weighted on base average, and Toronto is number 2 by implied team total in betting markets. The White Sox come in a little lower. They are the 5th highest ranked OF index stack tonight. They have the 3rd highest implied team total, and they have slightly lower weighted on base averages, the 4th on this slate, and slightly lower projected isolated slugging at 6th on this slate. I think that they're both pretty good high-risk options tonight. Toronto probably ends up a little more popular than the White Sox. So what I'm going to do is probably try to primary stack the White Sox here against Greinke, focus on some of the right-handed bats that I can get into my lineup, and see what that allows me to do after that. Now on the White Sox, filtering our individual hitter model for the White Sox, we have 5 guys with an OF index above a 4. That's typically something nice that we like to look for. I do think we can go below that tonight just for correlation's sake if we are stacking the White Sox against Greinke. Something also of note here outside of that top 5 is AJ Pollock is the minimum price here on DraftKings. So if you really want to stack the White Sox and pay up for some other things, he certainly would help you get there. Let's hop on over to DraftKings, and you'll see I've already filtered this for Garrett Cole at starting pitcher, 5 White Sox bats that are high upside here. Let's see, Grandal and Sheets will both hit lefty tonight against Greinke, but both Grandal and Sheets actually have the highest actual isolated slugging against right-handed pitching over the last year or so of their plate appearances. Really good weighted on base averages. So I think that sort of mitigates the matchup somewhat with Greinke, who's effective against lefties. And then the other 3 guys that I have in here, Moncada, Robert, and Jose Abreu, all have elite ISO and WOBA projections, or elite ISO and WOBA performance against right-handed pitching over the last year or so of their careers. You just have to make some choices tonight. A guy like Tim Anderson, who leads off, is also a good play. Some of the other outfielders, Andrew Vaughn, AJ Pollock, certainly worth considering. But this is where I'm going for this particular build in this video. And you see I have $5,200 per player remaining to do something with my lineup. That certainly means that I would very much be able to get Scherzer in here as my second pitcher and just go 1-2 in the model, pay up for these expensive guys, $3,400 per player remaining, and I should be able to figure out how to fill out these final 3 spots if I want to do that. If you want to have a little more flexibility to roster stud hitters in your secondary stack, I think Giolito gives you the most flexibility, but obviously with that strikeout upside, we can go for Shohei Ohtani. So there's just a lot of different paths you can take, especially if you go with the Chicago White Sox stack against Zach Greinke here on DraftKings. Over on FanDuel, I think it's fairly straightforward. Go with Garrett Cole. He's our number 1 option. Go with these 4 White Sox hitters if you choose to play the slate this way. And you have $30-$50 per player remaining. Plenty of room to make something happen with the rest of your lineup here on FanDuel tonight. Awesome slate, honestly. A lot of great options, a lot of different ways to play it. Keep an eye out for the daily plug. We'll post that at OccupyFantasy.com by about 5:30 p.m. Eastern. We'll have our final rankings for the day based off confirmed lineups. And if you want to continue to talk about MLB DFS throughout the day, as always, you can consider joining our Discord. There's a link to do so below the description of every video that we post. And we'll be back on Friday to talk about more MLB DFS. We're going to have some short slates on Thursday, so we're not going to have any videos for you. But we will have our model up at OccupyFantasy.com. Talk to you on Friday for more MLB DFS.